Well, welcome everybody. We're very happy to have Ajahn Narindo, old friend. So Ajahn Narindo, thanks so much for joining us. Okay, so we'll just start off by reading a short little biography of Ajahn Narindo. So Ajahn Narindo was born in 1981 in the Netherlands, where he studied and worked in marketing and law. In his 20s, he encountered Buddhism, began practicing the precepts, and eventually turned towards monastic life. In 2012, he received full ordination at Amaravati Monastery in the UK. And since that time, he has practiced and trained in monasteries in Thailand, where we first met, in America, at Temple Forest Monastery, and in Portugal, where he is now at Sumedharam, where he's currently spending the Rains Retreat. Through meditation, he has discovered a peace far deeper than consumerist pursuits and chose to dedicate his life to this path of practice. It's nice. Did you write that, or did AI write that? Or?
That sounds pretty impressive, no?
Well, we thought to kind of structure this interview about just surviving modern monastic life and the kind of lessons that can be drawn for a larger audience. I think most people who watch this or listen to this won't be monastics. Some of them might be interested in it, but there are a lot of lessons that can be drawn. I mean, we're all human and dealing with human emotions and mind states. So thought maybe to just roughly structure this based on the different levels of training that happen in a modern monastery, especially in the Ajahn Chah tradition. But maybe you can just start by filling anything out about your background before coming to monastic life. I listened to one of your recent talks, and you talked about one of your personality traits is that you'd like to make things better. How did that manifest before you came to monastic life? And did that lead to you wanting to become a monk?
Well, first of all, just to say officially that thank you for inviting me. It's nice to see both of you. And I know Ajahn Kovilo for a long while, and I think I see Ajahn Nisabho for the second time.
We passed him. It's like hundreds of monks at Amaravati.
So it's nice to see both of you, and you're trying to do this podcasting and sharing this through the new medium, and you say the modern mind, right? And I think it's very suitable for the day and age these days, right? I think not only lay people, but also monks consume and view and watch this stuff as well, right? Isn't it?
Yep.
So maybe a little bit background for me, say why I want to make things so, the annoying trait I have to want to make things better according to myself, though. It's not better for the world necessarily. It's just better to at that time what I'm thinking about, what is better. And I don't know, it's just more like growing up in a Chinese family in Holland. My parents are Chinese Malaysians. And if you met Chinese Malaysians, not all of them are like that, but quite a few are quite like immigrant style, eager to improve their lives and to make money and to be independent and being less dependent on, let's say, the structure of society, let's say. Like, money is king or cash is king. Like if you have funds, you can be more independent than awaiting what society dictates. And I think there's a common trait among a lot of immigrants, not only my family, let's say. And then they ran a little restaurant, and in the restaurant was always the thought of how to improve things. Like you have something, it doesn't work. So how do we make it work? Or something went wrong, how do we change this? And there's endless of issues arising in that. And if you both have not lived or grown up in a restaurant, it's not much more different than a monastery.
Okay.
Or monastery, as you say it in America. So you have problems, you have people problems, you have things problems, you have machine problems, you have schedule issues, you have personal issues, you have, right, all that stuff. And I think our approach, because I think born in a more commercial setting, when money is important, like if you have machines that breaks, it costs more money to fix it. Or if things takes too long, it costs more money. And if you need two or more people to work, it costs more money. So that was really ingrained in me. And then, of course, going through like studies that called marketing and business and that kind of stuff doesn't help, because of course they teach you profit. It means more sales, less cost, basically, and that's more profit. And then the more effective you are, the more you get. And then I think that really make my conditioning and thinking how the world is, how I approach things, really much like that, effective and whatever that means, basically efficient. And I think I'm not really the only one in the world. I have noticed quite a lot of people, especially I would say among monks less so, because a lot of monks I might find quite different than myself. They're more sensitive. They're not so caring about money. They prestige maybe a bit, but they fame and being, very narcissistic, dominant. That's not really the common traits among the monks. So I must say I don't have all those traits, but I must say those traits are more prevalent in the business world.
So how do you move from a family environment of that and general proclivity towards those things being at least valued to some extent to ordaining as a monk?
Yeah, I think we all have, when I ask people about it as well, like if I would ask you, each one of you or other monks, they all have their, I would say, interesting stories. And it's a search, isn't it? There's a search and for something you don't know. I think initially, for me, I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew that was something lacking. And what I explain to people is that, like with business, often you're taught to, that there's a box here. You are taught to think out of the box. If you think out of the box, you make money. Like everyone sell things, present products and services, and it's always existing. And you always want to find something that doesn't exist. And if you find something that doesn't exist or in a certain combination, that's the market, right? Where the market could be, and then you can capture that. When I was studying law, it was just opposite. So you have still the box, but you have to stay very close to the line of the box in order to make money. Does that make sense? There's the law, and you want to scurry around. And of course, if you cross it, you break the law. That's not great, because then you do illegal stuff. But you want to be as close as possible, like how to avoid tax evasion, call it, or tax planning. It depends what perspective you have. But learning those things, I always felt, but okay, I can fire half of the people in order to replace them with machines. But where's the morals? Where's the heart? How do you make decisions about that? And they don't teach you that. They teach you, $500,000 more on bottom line, they call it, more profit. That's the goal. That means you're doing right. But often they don't teach you, what about these people? What about families? What about you have to fire someone? What and how to improve people? Improve people for utility. They teach you. We put people on management courses or training courses and stuff. So you must understand that is my individual experience with my education. But also you hang out with people like-minded, they think like that. So I think I felt a vacuum in there where I was more interested in not only that. Of course, I was very interested in that. And I think I was pretty good in that short time I was working in that field to be quite ruthless in some ways, But to find something that was closer to heart was more difficult. And I happened to come across, I was doing a study exchange in Singapore. And I actually came across a poster called Introduction to Buddhism. And I'm like, oh, let's have a look. And then actually where they were telling about karma, action results, and 5 precepts, 4 noble truths, and you are the owner of your karma. When you do something, if I can fire people, then I find my answer. If you fire people and you feel bad about it, that's because of you, myself. I mean, even though you or my boss might disagree that it's well-deserved, they are just unproductive, or the survival for the company, whatever that means. I felt like, wow, that is more closer to something I can understand and grasp and feel and experience and decide for myself. So funny enough, that was also the first time I saw a Western monk, because in Singapore at times in the early 2000s, I came across the Buddhist fellowship, in Singapore, and Ajahn Brahm was coming, Ajahn Brahmavangsa from Australia. And he wasn't that popular yet, but popular enough. And it was great, actually, to be able at such a young age for myself to meet people like that, and then ask the questions that we have most likely asked, the people as well, and to get it clarified. And I remember that at that time, it just takes a lot of work for ourselves, to get there. I mean, it's easy to understand, like Anapanasati Sutta. It's easy, right? We can all read it in 5 minutes. But to do it, it's like the first 2 paragraphs. To do it, it's just years and years. Don't even look at the end of that sutta. Like just in the beginning, like focus on the breath. It's like, how do you do that without getting lost? So I was very inspired at the time.
And was that enough just to launch you off into robes right away, or did it take a little bit? Just the final movement into actually ordaining. Anything to say about that?
I was actually somehow tricked into taking the 5 precepts, or dared. Maybe the American was dared. I was dared. And I liked being dared, like, of course I can do it, And then I took the 5 precepts, and you must understand, if as a student or your young 20s, you're still looking for the world, right? Like what is right and what's wrong. And most rules don't apply to you, right? You just try out. And I think drinking was, I wasn't a alcoholic, but, drinking was part of social life, like it's not a bit, you drink a Coke, you drink some juice or water, and you sometimes drink some wine or beer. It's not a big deal, or spirits. And I think as soon as I tried to take the 5 precepts, the first weekend when I woke up, I remember after one day going out and, dancing and clubbing and going out, I felt so clear in my mind. Like I never felt that clear after going out. And my body was groggy and tired, but there was a difference between the mind space and the body space. Like a mental tiredness and body tiredness was really different. And my mental tiredness didn't go down. And my mind, like my conditioning, was to activate efficiency and effectiveness. And I could see having a clearer mind means more productivity for me. You see? So I thought I honed into that. So like, all the social difficulties, because students at your, the age group will not give you an easy time if you don't drink. So, but, that or more productivity or clearer mind, I chose the clearer mind. And then I've done that since I was in my early 20s. And I think by the late 20s, I've read enough, listened to enough podcasts. In those days, you had iPods, Ajahn Narindo Monastery had a lot of podcasts. I read the books, Nikayas and all the forest sutta, the forest little booklets that they're being offered. And I think that one day, like so many years of practicing basically 5 precepts, I realized now I have to do practice meditation. I have done enough. I've listened enough. I've done the simple practice of 5 precepts enough. And I think that I went to Amaravati for a retreat. Like first I did a Goenka retreat for 10 days. I liked that, but not that style. And then I did a 10-day in Amaravati a year later, which was 2009. In London, in Amaravati Buddhist Monastery. And I think after 4 days or something, Ajahn Narindo and Ajahn Narindo, they were explaining the present moment practice. And I was really honing into it. And I think my mind just snapped off my thinking process, my time, future, past, that it sort of grounded me in the present for a good whole second. I think it was a long second, or a long 2 seconds, right? But it was so monumental to change my perspective and my experience. Peace arose in me, and and I could say, this is it, and this peace I'm looking for, which doesn't require anything, and it also, I snap out of it, a bit like the Matrix, you snap out of it, or the Truman Show. You suddenly realize that everything around you is just playing with you or something. You're not really you don't have to play with it or something. And then when you don't play with these things, it's sort of a new perspective arose that arises from non-playing, basically. It's just non-being or something. And that really, I would say, screwed me over, basically. Like my career, my house, my pretty wife and pretty kids that I have, my dog, I thought like, I need to do this. I need to find out what this is. And I was in my late 20s, like 29, something like that. And then 2010, I just went for it and then did a trial. I just, like as you know, I don't know how your journey was. But in Amaravati Buddhist Monastery, you just have to come as a layperson for a few months and be a Nagarika for a year or more, Samanera for a year. And, you slowly go into it. And that took me quite a while, right? A few years to really get off my old conditioning, basically.
And did you have a wife and any kids, or was that just in general? That's the way.
Yeah. No, it's the path, right? The real path.
Yeah. The dog too, yeah.
The dog too, yes.
Well,
but like in the 20s, people, I don't know in your in America where you grow up, but in my area, it's sort of you were working on that, if that makes sense. You're making a career, you're working, and then you're looking for a girlfriend, in my case a girlfriend, and then to see who will be one that sticks around or you like most or whatever, and then make decisions to live together, etc. That was more the intention, where my whole adult life was honed into until that experience, basically.
Right. Yeah, no, I've known a number of former businessmen, now monks, former lawyers, now monks, but it's a very different, some similarities. Like we also have lots of rules as monastics, working with the law of the Vinaya, but it is a very different whole mindset, and kind of the ideals or the values of monastic life are so different, like just contentment, wanting little, dispassion rather than passion. And I'm curious how it was for you going from this, the worldview of the world, just getting more stuff and almost training in discontent, coming into a monastery where there is this coherency of you going in a direction of more and more contentment, or contentment with less. And maybe specifically talking about the different levels of training. I think many people watching or listening won't be familiar with actually what are the different levels before someone becomes a fully ordained monk?
Yes, I'm not sure if I understand your question entirely, but I think what you're trying to ask is like, how did I deal with, for instance, coming to the monastery, and especially with contentment, discontentment, and
exactly.
How did that work on me?
Yep, and taking on the 8 precepts, so you're giving up food afternoon. Eventually in Samanera, you're giving up money. Someone who's been actually accumulating money and has some money. It was easy for me. I only had $600 that I had to give away when I became an Anagarika.
Well, that's better than most Americans, I've been told, with all the debts that they have. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's. I think in one way, I compare it to other people with, without passion and hobby. It's like the goal was not food, right? To me, the goal was not money. When I come to the monastery and try to figure it out, and I could, like, having that experience that I just explained to you, like in a simple way, right? But it had quite a large effect internally. That was the beacon, my it's called the North Star, right? That's where I wanted to go for. And then with my effective mind, right? My conditioning of being effective, and in some ways quite narcissistic and quite disassociated with what reality brings, just go for it kind of thing, like very result oriented. It was easy for me to, okay, like what do I need to do? Okay, I have to wear this funny white clothing. Okay, shave my head, fine. Eyebrows too, bit weird, fine. What else? No more girlfriends and touching women and okay. What else? Like something like that. More like this attitude of just get on with it, with the program, and to see, okay, this is just extra stuff. That is just stuff that doesn't really matter, right? So you just do it, follow the program, but hone in on what are we trying to do. It was already, for me, it was more difficult to learn to sit for an hour or 45 minutes together. Like I don't know whether you had this experience whereby you wait for the bell. I don't have that anymore, but it's like awareness, Ajahn ringing the bell. Oh God, this is so long. It's like, oh, I'm feeling pain. My legs, can I move? Can I not move? That whole period was there, and of course I've still very much conditioned to like things, like the things I like. When you go out, you see nice cars. When people come, you see sometimes quite attractive people coming. When you see good food, you like good food. Wow, finally we got this food. Oh, I haven't been eating this one. Like all the other food that I didn't like. But that is not the training. We are trained to, to deal with the other bits. And I think over time, going through having no choice is very good. Like as a monastic, you being offered whatever you're offered, even though you have some slight say as a monastery and etc. in it, but overall nothing. Like as an individual, as an anagarika, the youngest person and the newest member of the community, almost nothing. And but what I found interesting in my life already as a layperson, I was always a bit afraid to be addicted to something. So when I liked something, I sort of dial back, not to indulge too much. So I think I do have of course, a tendency, or everyone has a tendency to like and indulge more and more in something. But when I see that, I felt it as a fetter to myself, that I sort of try and go back. There's also, for instance, I stopped playing video games when I was 12, 13, when I saw my cousin being so into it and spending so much time into it. I thought, that's not very effective, isn't it? Efficient with your time. Like if you spend playing games, how about work? How about, other skills and other people? So coming into the monastery is also thinking about how to be effective being a monk, basically, and how effective to brainwash oneself, whatever that means, into understanding and wanting what to be as a monk. But I think over time, it's important, I think, for me to realize that as a layperson, I had quite a colorful life. Sometimes I hear other monks telling about their lives. It's not as colorful, but let's put it this way. Trust me on that. I thought it was very colorful and exciting. And I was doing all kinds of different things, like I went on travels in this country, this place, that place, meeting this person, that person. And it was always very different, like meeting different people, talking about different things. But all the different things that I tried to do became the same. It's always different. It's always this. It's always that. It's always this. Even though the content is different, but the method to approach it is always the same. In a monastery, I realized what helped me is that the method is always the same, but the content is actually very different. Like in some ways, like, no, how do I say it? The mind, you experience the mind differently. Like as a layperson, I experience the outside, like the other people. Like today I will talk to you, tomorrow I'll talk to someone else, the day after I talk to someone else. This time I will visit America, and the next week I will visit Spain. But then internally it felt very similar, but externally it's very different, if that makes sense. Externally, you are in Spain. It's very different, completely different. But as a monk, I noticed that we go to breakfast every day the same, right? The breakfast in a monastery is every day the same. I always see the same people, same routine. You go to the 5 o'clock puja, evening puja, the work. It's always the same in the, the small little place that you hang around for most of the year. But actually, when you go to breakfast, my mind was really different than the day before. I start noticing that. Oh, I'm excited. I'm not excited. Oh, I'm tired. I'm pissed off. I'm angry. I'm depressed. I'm elated. And every time we go to the breakfast, it's the same, but it's different. Yeah. And the mind is very different. And that was more interesting to look at than dealing with discontent at the breakfast, for instance. If you look at the breakfast itself as my lay eyes, my lay mind, why and how, I'm giving money, why and how, so. But actually, the training, what we've been given, I found, is that it dials back into often getting no choice what we can have, and often what we get being given is similar. I can't go to the Starbucks, and when people like to ask, Bante, what would you like to drink? And I see like 100 options, and I have no clue, what you like. But as a layperson, I can understand you try this one or that one, or you have a preference. When you go to Starbucks, you go for this. When you go to another coffee shop, you go for that. But as a monk, you have been trained not to care about that anymore. It's like a coffee is a coffee, a drink is a drink, fluid is fluid, liquid is liquid. You dial it back until you see how it works in ourselves. And I think that makes it so interesting and so long-lasting, actually, to see, wow, it's actually interesting. Like if I could now go for a coffee, or people offer me coffee, wow, what comes in my mind,
Yeah, I'd never framed it like that, but yeah, lay life really is, at least in modern times, all about external novelty, but internal dullness or monotony. In the monastic life, you flip it around, it's internal novelty. It's interesting. You see all these different mind states coming up, and external is monotonous. Everything, every day is pretty much the same in a monastery. Just have a real quick question before going back more into specifics of monastic life is, I don't have Chinese, Malaysian, Dutch parents, but just stereotypically speaking, to have a young male child, it's oftentimes quite hard for Chinese parents to give up their son into feeling like they're giving up their son into a monastic life, which is so different from the aspirations which you framed as like, immigrant aspirations of wanting to succeed and wanting to make something of oneself. And I'm curious how your parents, I've met them. They actually gave me an MP3 player probably 10 years ago. Super generous. I was so grateful for that. But yeah, how did they hold you leaving the world, leaving all of their aspirations for you?
I think one of the it's hard to say because I'm not my parents, but how they experience it really, I'm sure it did something to them. But I think overall, I'm quite lucky. We were quite lucky with how we work together and know each other, and that it was quite smooth, And I think what made a difference was that I've been doing this Buddhist stuff, going to monasteries and practicing a bit here and there, not really strong meditation, but reading Buddhist books and practicing the 5 precepts. That really gave a big difference. My mom and my dad could see me changing, like don't have to say anything. They could see it. They could see whatever I was doing. They don't understand, but whatever that was had an influence, and they could see that as a relationship between that. And then, of course, if you tell your parents or tell anyone, actually, you go for a 10-day retreat, people all think you're crazy, right? That's most circles. People are like, you pay money to go where? Take paid leave to go where? To be silent? You can be in your room silent, And when I came back from Amaravati the second time, the second retreat I did, I came home and told my parents, that I'm thinking of going to the monastery now. It's like cold turkey, right? That's like completely shocking. And my mom was very clever, I found. She said, oh, they listened to my story and what I want, and then my mom says, okay, well, wait for the summer, because it was June, wait for the summer holidays, and, and I work, and then you have some holidays, and September, October, like around now, this time. If you still think that you want to give us 3 months, give you 3 months. If you think, then you get my blessing. And I was kind of an impulsive kind of guy, like, as you know me a bit, I'm like, oh, let's do it. Let's do it. But so in my mind, I thought like, okay, if I want to go for life anyway, I knew I want to go for life, but if I want to choose this, it's going to take a long time to stay. It's like, oh, a few months doesn't matter. And then I can wrap things up properly. And I really like my job, you see, like the people there. And so I spent time to do that. And after 3 months, I still was thinking the same. And then I told my parents, and they were then okay with it, that it was not like a rushed thing, So that made a difference to them. And then I did a lot of PR, like personal relationships, or public relation, like to sell the story to them. I sell the monastery to get them over. I asked them to bring me over there, drive me over there. So, because what I noticed, when people have never been to a monastery, they can think about all kinds of things. But as you've seen parents coming, right? Once they are in the monastery, oh, I didn't know there are normal people here. There's not a cult. There's food. Mom was important for food. Was it? Do you live safely? Like they didn't know, right? But once they saw it, experienced it, helped in the kitchen, stayed there, there are normal people there that you can talk to. There's not all this kind of religious lunatics kind of thing. Then they felt at ease. So I felt, I do find that some monks could have do a bit more for their parents to make it land softly, rather than PR, rather than just go and then ignore parents and argue with them. And then, I mean, everyone has different relationships with their parents, but I always felt that when they come, you just stick them in the kitchen, with other people. Even like a lot of monks feels or nuns, when parents come, they should not do anything. And I, first of all, don't come from a family like that. More, my family is more about just participate. I know that by participation, they feel more included, they feel more seen, accepted, and then somehow it becomes normal. And kitchen is something, of course, as a restaurant, but kitchen in general is quite a safe space for lay people. It's normal things around. No kitchen in any monastery that I've seen is a specific Buddhist kitchen, if that makes sense. Kitchen has pans and pots and stainless steel stuff, tiles, cookers. So they never feel out of place. That they are not being reminded, oh, this is weird kind of cultish Buddhist stuff. You see what I mean? And when they join, I felt that's really helpful for them to, oh, there's actually, I can be myself or be normal here. And then, of course, when you go to the monks sit on the ground, they have to sit on the floor and bow, and people bow, you don't have to bow. Then, the weirdness can come. But if this is all the things they know, then it makes it really weird for parents or for lay people or friends that come.
Some amount of familiarity, non-cultish kitchens. Yes.
Yes, I think so. And food, it talks to any human, or any animal, once they eat food, they don't think about Buddhist food, they just think about, oh, this is nice, that's nice, or this is not nice. And so
we had speaking of Starbucks, we had someone come to the US and they had to watch a YouTube video about how to order at Starbucks. It's a whole experience, and it is intimately related to self, about what's my combination. It's very American in that sense. Bhante, in terms of looking at using that systems perspective informed by your experience in commerce and more, what is your, you're right that in monastic life, often it is just using wisdom to gain perspective on how the mind is relating to these kind of regular interactions you have day after day after day. And yet, there's a real distinction between monastics. I think we've all seen monastics who flourish and are very nourished by the life, and those who dry up. And when the monastic life becomes very brittle, and usually will eventually end in indisroble if that's the case, what have you seen as the key aspects that keep someone's monastic life actually vibrant, flourishing, versus kind of drying up? Like, what advice would you give a new monastic, or even a majjhima?
Majjhima being a
sort of middle age from
5 to
monastic,
5
10
years.
vasas.
5 to 10 vasas. I think that is a dangerous question to answer, as if I know. I might disrupt tomorrow.
Don't do
Or
it.
you might disrupt. Huh?
Don't do it.
Okay, I'll wait for a week maybe. For 3 months.
Yeah, all
My
3
mom says
years,
3 months after.
Good.
So it's hard, it's hard to say things for certain, if that makes sense. I want to put a disclaimer there that, I have my ideas, but who knows what my ideas are, and can it be proven, or you might agree or not agree. And of course, I think all three of us have seen enough people coming in, going out. Of course, there's more people leaving than staying, which is how the system works, right? So there's more people, that have left that you have known. But I think I would not see, unfortunately, I think this is not the party line, that being a monk is the ultimate goal of everyone. That, being a monk, staying a monk is the best. That's, when you stay as a monk, and this is the secret to stay as a monk. And when you die, whether you're young died or you died when you're 90 or 100, 120, then you have fulfilled the best thing in life. I don't see it like that. Because people come to this life for different reasons, and not everyone has the reason for current life enlightenment or something, if that makes sense. So Buddha has, if we can believe the Buddhist stories about the Buddha's past lives, he also had difficulties, right? So, remember there's one story when he was a Brahmin, and then he had a friend who says, hey, there's a Lord Buddha here, we should go. And he's like, a Brahmin, I don't want to go. And then after a while, he was pulled by the hair by this low caste friend to go to the Lord Buddha. And the Buddha talks about his past lives, a recent past life from a last Buddha, basically, or one of the recent Buddhas. So in this aeon, meaning in his very accomplished merit system, or that he has paramis, he was still not immediately interested in Buddhist teachings, if that makes sense. Like we can feel very accomplished or interested, but then if the Buddha is the most accomplished and he's going to be the Buddha within an eon, he was still not interested naturally to go there, if that makes sense. There might be other reasons for that. I'm just putting that out. But one of the things that I do see, what makes this life easier, is, of course, if you have not much issues with what Ajahn Kovilo was saying, with discontent. Discontent in the end is just, or contentment is just a mind state. a mind state, and if you cannot see the mind state for what it is, like what I was trying to say before was, in lay life we see often the content, like the content of things, like, okay, this is a new person, or it's a nice person, or it's not a nice person, or I get good food or bad food, or how do I work with that, or I don't like it, so I have to repress my don't likeness, or my anger. I have a lot of anger issue. I have to repress that, because as a good Buddhist or good monk, I should not be angry. I should have metta. Where's the metta? And then you try to get metta, and then you sort of try to mold yourself into a new being. Like you give yourself a new script. You hire a new movie director, and then that you live that life. That's this. You write, Buddhist movie director, Buddhist script about a Buddhist monk, and you sort of tell yourself this story, and that's what you have to live by. But I think, well, what is helpful for us, for anyone actually, it doesn't have to be monks, but to be able to see to the flow of things. There's a flow. There's how things happens in the mind, how this gets created. Seeing creation rather than being the creation, or being created, or rather than seeing the being, if that makes sense. And that goes all back to mindfulness and present moment and reflection. And it's what I tried to tell people the other day was, if you look at the mirror, like we're actually looking at the mirror now, right? I'm seeing myself, you're seeing yourself. You can only see yourself at this moment, right? Okay, it's recording, but if you want to see how you are at the moment, you look at the mirror and you see a reflection, how you are now. And when you were not using a camera, you could not see yourself. You were being, you were whatever you were. But now you see, you can have two things. You can be, and you can reflect on it. You can see yourself. And I think that the trick for us, what I found helpful for myself, is to have that in the mind as well. Like if I close my eyes, how can I see this reflection? And that's hard, because we get consumed by our thoughts about our being, about our script, right? Our acting, I am like this. And then I'm like that. It's keep feeding us a new script, right? Every second, every moment, to how to be. But if you can sort of see through that, see, I'm being fed a script. I can reflect on that and see that. And the best one, if you have even mindfulness, you can see what happened the moment before, or 5 minutes before, an hour before, a day before. Then you see a relationship between how it was then and how it was now. Is there something I did in the past that resulted in me now? Like I'm angry now. Maybe there was something that I followed through, or did, or said, or thought. And then be able to see that and reflect on that. And then when it happens again, hopefully having create freedom for you, or choice, that you do not follow it through in a way. Do not do that. And in order to do that, you need to have this reflection all the time. Because without reflection, you just become this mindless actor, basically, like believing in your own script, in your own story, that you forgot it's actually a whole game with karma or with conditioning, So I forgot the question, but I thought I'd like to say that. The reflection to see
making
oneself.
A documentary about the filmmaker as the movie's being made, something like
Yes.
that. Okay.
Oh yeah, the question was about
what keeps you? What makes a
keeps you as a monk,
life
right?
nourished?
Yeah. So I think the reflection, present moment, having that moment where you know where to look. And unfortunately, I've seen too many people getting lost in their thoughts, basically, emotions and thoughts. Like they believe it, that they're being a good monk, trying to find a script. Like they read all stuff and try to redo their script, because we're used to that. We want to be a good person. What is a good person? Don't argue with people. Or, when someone is angry, you don't respond in kindness. That's script thinking, like that is what I have to do. If that happened, I have to do this. When that happened, I have to do that. But here you have the reflection. You actually can decide better for yourself what is the right and the wrong in yourself. And if I sort of bark at you, it's not necessarily wrong, if that makes sense. Maybe it's not enlightenment, but there can be a learning in there. There can be dukkha in there. There can be something to be seen, if that makes sense. And if you can't see that, then the next time I don't bark at you, but I get seething, and I sort of become angry in myself. And that's okay. As long as I don't shout at you, that's okay. But then internally I cannot see it. So if you become more honest and be able to look at oneself inside, I think that is the more difficult part, that it's naked, that you know what you are, you know what you do, you know what you think, and you know how you have created that. And where work still needs to be done. And oneself can always see that. It doesn't matter how I act, actually, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I'm curious just to continue to, thinking about scripts or the different scripts that you see, the different patterns that you see in a monastic life, in a monastic trajectory. There's a saying, which I'm pretty sure I've heard people say in different monastic settings, but it does point to these different patterns, the ways that people can get distracted in monastic life. So it's that pre-monks will talk about meditation. So new monks, between when they first ordain and 5 years, will talk about food because, we're giving up, food afternoon. People from 5 to 10 years in robe will talk about travel because you have this more freedom. People from 10 to 20 years talk about building. They're all off building their own monasteries. And people over 20 years in robes talk about medicine because we're all old and talk about hospital visits and all the different appointments that we have.
Ajahn just turned 43 2 days ago.
That's
yesterday.
Right.
Yesterday.
That's right. But we
So
all...
are you talking about buildings or medicines now?
Yeah, exactly. So we're all about the same monastic age, and theoretically, the building phase of things, which certainly Ajahn Nisabho and I are in right now. But how does one? Do you have any thoughts about how to come back to our initial intention of why we are ordained, rather than getting distracted in these kind of unconscious scripts? It's like none of us want to talk about food all the time as young monks, or get lost in travel or get lost in building, but we can. So how does one avoid these kind of unhealthy scripts?
You see that it goes to the same thing. It's the content really doesn't matter. And like if we want to talk about food the whole day, you can talk about the food in a very wholesome way, if that makes sense, right? Like we could do that, right? If we want to make it an exercise, like, okay, how can we talk about food that it becomes release of dukkha, right? We can do that, I think. But I guess the way you say it is more indulgent, maybe like, we had a good food today. This morning there was this and this and that. But rather than going against that, avoiding it, preventing it, making people not talk about that, or in a few years don't talk about going here and there, or make people not talk about building, or lecturing you see, you're falling in this conditioning, you two are talking about building stuff. But it's when the conditions are there, like yourself, you're staying in a place and the place needs to be developed, inevitably you're going to talk about buildings, right? And you have interest in there.
We don't have interest yet, but
no, but you do call yourself a monastery.
Monastery project, officially.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that sort of implies and create conditions for that talking about it. Whereas I don't, right? I come here as a guest in this Portuguese monastery and not necessarily talk about it. And I think going back again, I think what is more important is to be able to see it. Like, okay, when I talk about food, what is the mind states behind that? Is it greed? Is it interest? Or just filling up airtime? Or because you want to talk about food, I try to cater to you, make your life more comfortable. That okay, you're a bit concerned about food, so we talk about it, and whatever. Like what is it coming from? I think that is more important, that we know that for ourselves, and then whether what we then say, which topic it is. Like I think one of the teachers, they say, like we just like what we do now. It's like we have to talk about something. We don't have to talk. But I'm a particularly talkative person, so I know monks that are particularly not talkative at all. They don't talk at anything. But
it'd be an awkward interview if we just stared at each other. So.
I've heard that monks were doing that, just to say nothing. That is the teaching, they try to teach. But I think it's important not to, which is important, of course, the topic what we talk about. But I think it's more important, of course, to look at our internal mechanisms, where it comes from, and why are we talking about it, and what is the need for it? Am I saying things in a rushed way because I really want to say, or I'm just saying, okay, then if I don't have to say something, I don't have to say something, or someone else wants to say something. Like, how is that mechanism works in ourselves, and am I speaking for what reason? And I think the more clear I look at it is if you read the suttas, and there's actually, if you follow the suttas, if you want a new script, the Buddhist script, the Buddha script, the Nikaya script, there's really almost no time you have to say something. Just don't have to say something. That's almost the best. Like if you look at the need of saying something, you say when things are the right time and everything and necessary. Wow, if you really think about that, then don't say anything. But I think that's the ideal, and we work with very non-ideal bodies and conditions, and I think we allow leeway for that, if that makes sense. Like, and again, not every monk come in the monastic robe for the same reasons. And like for instance, in the monasteries you have stayed before, I'm staying in the kuti now. And the kuti was built maybe by a very restless monk who disrobed. But I'm plucking the fruits from it, basically, if that makes sense. Like, it's hard to say, to be pure about it, or purity, to say only this type of monks or monks should only become monks and the rest maybe not, or the rest should adjust. So there are a lot of different types of monks. Like, I think you have scholar monks, right? I mean, I think Ajahn Kovilo likes to be a bit scholastic as well. I think if he hasn't changed his conditioning,
he likes that Pali.
Yeah,
like Pali and Thai.
But now I'm reading books from monks, translating it. I will not change my life for them. Like, they always talk about this boring Pali stuff, and this word can be translated as that. And did you know that this word also appears in this sutta and that sutta? And did you know that they translate it as this, but this is nonsense? And my mind is going over like, wow, who cares? But if I read the Majjhima Nikaya, with all due respect, from Bhikkhu Bodhi, someone has to go through it, to that boring stuff, what I don't want to do, in order to benefit from that, basically.
That's right.
And and so you have to allow that, if that makes sense. I think you have to allow that and look more at what our Vinaya has, the Buddhist rules. The Buddhist rules are the rules that has been set, and as long as we can believe in it, in the sense of this are what the Buddha has really said, this is what we have to do, and not more and not less, if that makes sense. Like, these are the minimum things. As long as we don't do that, then you have different type of monks. And also in the Buddha's time, they said you have monks that like to meditate, they sit together. You have the monks that like to build, they hang out together. You have the monks that likes to
lift weights.
That's right. Also fine, you see, and they hang out together.
Not as good, which is still.
You see, and because lift weights, maybe, but the people that are interested in that, or you have to also some bullies, right? Remember in the monasteries, they always break the rules.
A group of 6.
And you have those as well. And the Buddha did not say you all should be not monks, right? They say, okay, if you have this stuff and they really go overboard and they break a rule, or there's no rule yet, or make a rule, and these are the disciplinary actions, right? And I think that is more important than saying maybe if we go through maybe frivolous or very worldly stuff, worldly talks, worldly things. I think it's more important to really focus back on what we are trying to train, if that makes sense, rather than, again, I want a new movie director with a new screenwriter kind of thing for my life.
Ideal.
In terms of one of the mirrors, you talk about this quality of reflecting back on kind of the subject that's coming into interaction with the world. And I hear echoes of Longpo Sumedho's teachings in some of these articulations too. There's 2 very potent mirrors that we get in monastic life. And one is the suttas, seeing the Buddha's kind of the mirror he holds up to us. And then also community and living with others and really seeing ourselves reflected back in all of our, glory and perhaps places we could be improved significantly. Would you speak to maybe both of those, actually, or at least one? Is there a sutta or a teaching of a teacher or the Buddha which has really continued to resonate with you through these years that is especially relevant continuously? Or in community life, what have you found to be especially a skillful reflection with working with living in a community, which is a whole new experience for many people? So one or both of those would be interesting.
Oh God, I have to quote suttas, right? I don't know.
No, you don't have to quote them. It's all right. Just paraphrase is all right.
I must say I have read a lot of them, and sometimes when they come up for certain situations, and I have not one that I sort of live by or quotes. I don't live like that. I live more, especially when I talk about this stuff, it will come up passages or certain places, like for instance that that story with the Brahmin and the Lord Buddha's past story. And I think it's also one of the Ajahn Brahm tells a story like that. But stories like that will pop up, or whatever is useful. And of course, I think more inclined to Lord Meadows' teachings in some ways, the reflecting and present moment and being here and now. And I try, when I often share Dhamma or share what I experience, is what I also do for myself, is looking at the present moment and seeing how things work, and analyze and dissect. That's what I do. And mostly whatever I say is based on that, basically, on that idea. Sorry, the second question.
The mirror of community. What is sort of one reflection you found especially meaningful living in, and not just Amaravati is unique where it's a bunch of different nationalities mixed together as Nanachat is, and that's a whole, the spectrum of personality you get in a situation like that is pretty astounding, sort of living in harmony in that situation.
And also living all together in one-ish building, which is quite
Yes.
different from other monasteries where everybody's got their own huts.
It's a very narrow hallway. So.
Yes, I think going there, I didn't know better, right? So it's not like that I knew that I could stay in a hut, and then from a hut I go to where we all cop up together, right? I think one of the things, what I learned to be at ease with is with myself. And I go to my own script, right? If I use the example of using my own script, and what I'm used to, I'm quite straight talker, quite in people's face. When I don't disagree with something, or when I agree with something, I'll just say it. And one of those guys, like, whoa, why do you put flowers over there at the back of you? I will ask these questions, not maliciously, it's like saying it's ridiculous, but more like, I don't understand. Can you explain? But not often it doesn't come across like that for people, because of my lack of how to say things, or assuming that you understand. And then either I go in an argument with people, or you get like, oh, why is he so critical about this place? But that was not my intention. And learning about how is it, who am I, and what am I trying to do? And is that in sync with other people? And then I think getting more comfortable with oneself, in the sense of, I cannot really change myself too much. So I cannot be like the person that can be very understandable or say things in a very clear way and stuff. Even in any language that I speak, I don't do that. It's just bang, it comes out. Bang, it comes out. And like one of my friends says, like, some people think before they say, and some people say while thinking, and I'm more the last part, because some people will just, and they speak, and I'm just rattling on, right? As you can already see, when it comes out, and it has a certain effect, and that effect, let's say most of the time, when you have polished it in a certain way, comes across okay. People don't kind of offended. They're okay with how I speak. The new people might get a bit sort of shocked a bit, but it's okay. And there are times that people get really upset, or really angry, and for me, it's really to look at it. And of course, I can be very righteous and indignant about, oh, you're just stupid, or they don't understand. But I think there's a lot of time over time. There's a lot of reflections on, oh, it's just how it is, like. I sometimes cannot be understood. I sometimes cannot be taken what I understand or what I think is great. They will not think it's great, And even though I can say, or I can be very, let's say 50-50, hopefully it's 50-50. Like 50-50 is really not great. The most stupidest things I said that I should agree on. And 50 other times, yes, I was right, or it should have been like that. But then living in community, I noticed that it's not about absolute right or wrong anymore. It's more about, how do you get through the same door? How do you, like, okay, I think, no, just say something ridiculous, right? Rice is poison, right? That, as an Asian, you don't think like that, right? But let's assume rice is poison, and you think it's not poison, and we live together. And I say we should not have rice, and you say you should have rice, right? And then both of you don't care whether you get rice or pasta or whatever. But okay, if he is so upset about rice, even though it's completely, misinformed, we can just give up rice, and he's here, we don't eat rice, right? And then issue gone, if that makes sense. And then to be able to take that step together, for that reason. And of course, I could also look at myself and, oh, why don't I give up? Okay, it's just rice, and I'm here for. I just see rice. Okay, it's evil, or poison. Just let it be. Just don't take it. And that is hard. I found as a being to be able to step back, or to allow the other people to step back, and then just let it be, and not sort of gossip and say, "Hey, Ajahn Kovilo or Ajahn Narindo is so stupid. He thinks his rice is poisonous. Oh my God, he's one of the conspiracist people, and this and that." And that's hard not to do, if that makes sense. And that doesn't help in the community if I do that. And I found that is helpful, I would say, to adjust and to let go and to take a step back. But I'm nicely saying this while I'm reflecting on myself that I have much more work to do at that department, if that makes sense. So, but if you ask me, that I would say, getting on with each other, for what is harmonious rather than what is right, what I think is right.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And certainly for myself, coming to the monastery as a lot of people who aren't born in a Buddhist culture and are coming across Buddhism as adults and get inspired by a monastic life, have so many ideals, but so little practical knowledge of what it actually means to live with other people in a spiritual community. And you have really high ideals, and humans are humans. And kind of just tying that in, there's this sutta, the Chula Gosinga Sutta, where all of these different great monks come together and now meet up, and each of them talks about what kind of monastic, what kind of practitioner would illuminate the Sala tree grove. So what is like the ideal, or what is the, what kind of monastic, what kind of practitioner makes the world shine? And just put that to you, what kind of practitioner, in your view, makes the world shine?
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I'm cracking my brains and breaking my brains and what is the sutta? What was it again? What's the answer again?
No, there's every answer is right. Like I'm not, Ananda says, monks who remember the suttas are great. And right, says like psychic powers are great. And
yeah, for me, because my practice is more about present moment awareness, being able to stay in the present and being able to reflect and see how things arise and ceases, I think if people do that, in my mind, this is the way for me to be able to stop things, that's my escape hatch, basically. Like, whatever happens at this moment, this is it. I'm angry. I'm super angry. I'm even more angry now. Wow. And there's annoyance coming, and I don't want to be angry. I'm a monk. And, all these thoughts coming up in real time, if that makes sense, in real time. It's almost like if you see on a computer, these real graphs, that goes up and down, or the numbers are changing, or, that kind of feeling, that's what I sort of practice with,
It does make
and I find that very, very liberating.
And if you had to, speaking to a lot of the people watching this, I think right now a lot of people are, in terms of what's drawing them away from being able to reflect on their own experience. It's news, the state of the world, there's a lot of fear and anger. What advice would you give to those listeners, like how to remain attentive to your own heart and practice and experience while interacting with that realm? What advice would you give the listeners there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I was talking in Chithurst Buddhist Monastery, another monastery I stayed around the winter time this year, is in the United Kingdom. And I was speaking to, I call them kids because I'm now old. They were 26, 7, so they're not kids, but some of them graduated.
Whippersnappers. Yeah.
Whippersnappers, indeed. But very clever bunch, and it was interesting in the sense of there was 4 or 5 of them. One was 18 though, but they came to the monastery on their own accord a little bit, and because they had experienced something in their lives, in sort of what I have explained, like how I experienced it, that lead me to coming to the monastery. But they had their own little enlightenments or moments that they sort of was so strong to them that it changed how they saw life and saw how they should approach it. And they came to the monastery sometimes, just to come to the monastery to hear a bit of Dhamma, or to come to a quiet place or a meditative setting. So, they come for different reasons, but somehow I happened to be there, and I knew one, and then two came, and another one, and we had a nice discussion about it. And then these are the young people, right? That I felt like, wow, these are the new generation, right? And I was wondering, and I was talking to them, and one of them actually said, like, what I thought this was helpful was, in order to be able to be aware and to be in that space of clarity, one has to also give up fantasizing, because that's what we do. We fantasize all the time. Like in Buddhist way, we call it thinking or papancha, right? Like if I'm looking at Ajahn Kovilo now, the Pali scholar in this case, from us three. Papancha, how would you translate that properly?
Proliferation.
Proliferation, if the audience understand it, like just thinking, or in the mind. But what I really liked about it is that this person was saying, this young person, whippersnapper, was saying fantasizing. So we have, this person was saying that we also have to give up a bit of fantasizing, even though we like to do it, because we like to think about, oh, what's going to happen tomorrow? Who am I? What I'm going to do? I don't know, they were working, and maybe this, maybe that, or a friend, or a relationship, or maybe it's going to be like this, maybe I'll go on a date, or it's all fantasizing, right? Everything what we do always with the mind is fantasies, all fantasies. We don't say it like that because it sounds ridiculous, but if you're able to reduce that, you are more able to be seeing how things are, if that makes sense. And that's what I say about actor. Like if you believe too much in your acting, and you become the actor, to become what's being acted upon, it's fantasy, right? So I found that it's very tough and difficult, but I thought that was the best advice, actually, to ask people just to fantasize less. Like, like you say news and politics, and I know American politics takes the crown in attention span in the world, apparently. And it's just fantasy, isn't it? Like, people are dying, people are doing horrible stuff, but how we think about it is just fantasy. Like if someone is having a war or doing something bad, let's say someone is killing a cat like 10 doors from you, it has happened, and that's it. It's horrible, that's it. But what we do is like, oh, this neighbor is horrible, and this is doing that. Maybe he's this politically aligned person, or he has maybe this or that, or he in the past said that. So you fantasize, right? You create a fantasy around it. And that I found is more harmful to our being. And it's not to negate that there are bad things happening or good things happening, but the degree of fantasy over it is just remarkable how much that is. And you can see it in the media. You can see, they call it biases, right? Slants, or I don't know what the right words is, like, like when I called you a socialist or something, but just because you want to help people and share your cake, I'm now calling you a socialist, if that makes sense. And why do I call you a socialist? The clever one will understand where socialism is coming from, and the non-clever one will parrot because the other one said it. But it's fantasy. Like, what we have to see is what action did you do? You were sharing a cake, and you always want to help someone. That's all I see, and that's actually all there is. Whether I need to fantasize whether you're a good person, a bad person, a good monk, a bad monk, and etc., it's all fantasy. And I think that fantasy is just not helpful, and then we are, I think, too used to it. And in the end, we are just arguing about our own fantasy. My fantasy is I argue with you about your fantasy, what you think about me, or whatever the issue. And then another person, you. So three of us has our three fantasies that we sort of become very unhappy about, and I think that's just not helpful.
That was a great answer, and just this idea of tracing back the radiance to what's actually real and giving up the fantasy. Ajahn, it's been really wonderful having you, and we are at the end of the hour we decided we'd get, but we hope you get to visit here. We don't have that much rice. We get some, but usually we have some bread too. But really, we really appreciate you joining us, and just for all the wisdom you shared, etc. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for again inviting. It was interesting, and I wish you also good luck with what your endeavors. Your monastery project, and also this podcasting format. It's actually quite interesting to see some of us or some of people that I know also trying to do this. or setting up. I think it's for some audience or some people, this really speaks to them, right?
Well, thanks so much for joining.
Yes, thank you.